Hi guys, this is a quick 5 to 10 minute summary of what we have learned so far. The intent is for us to go through the video during our convenient timings and then I'll see if we can schedule a meeting where we all can get together and discuss. So we are going to get ourselves introduced to a new concept called a flywheel. This something that I might not have really touched upon it during our previous discussions. See, the intention of a flywheel is that it's a very interesting engineering device. It consists of a wheel that essentially is so designed that the wheel during its first crank, second crank, or subsequently maybe the third and fourth crank requires a lot of effort for the wheel to move around because of the mass. It's like a very massive wheel. Okay. But over a period of time, if done in a very clever way, what happens is because of the sheer mass and the initial velocity and the mass that gets subsequently added, if it is done cleverly, the momentum will pick up and then it will run by itself. So a flywheel is a concept where you engineer and design a wheel-like architecture that is self-sustaining. We are going to use this imagery in the context of financial modeling. This will help us generate wealth as the time passes by. The opposite cousin of a flywheel can be that of a treadmill. A treadmill is wherein no, you keep on jogging and running, but you'll be at the same place. But whereas a flywheel is something different. It can offer you freedom because with time it can snowball and cascade and take you places. Okay, so this is the imagery that I want you to have in mind as we go through the subsequent sections of the summary that we have discussed so far. Okay, next slide. So the goal of our all our discussion is going to be to design, nurture, and then subsequently ride our own flywheel. Everybody's flywheel is different, basing on everybody's aptitude towards asset classes. Some people might like asset class which are like real estate based, some people like commodity based, some people stock based, some people would like to invest in businesses, futures and options. So we take a pick, but essentially for every individual, basing on his taste and aptitude, we need to design they need to come up with a flywheel for themselves. Life gives is a life that way, may or may not give us opportunities that will always be of interest to us. That will always put our heart in the place where our passions and our motivation to solve problems will always be there. It all depends on the nature of the problem. But if you design your own flywheel, then the situation is different. You yourself know your aptitude, your interest, and with your own educational background and experiments, you can come up with your own flywheel. Okay, so the first part of the summary is actually between two boys, Arjun and that of Durai. What we saw is Durai is a kind of a person who is like, the typical person who has come out of the college or who has no financial or literacy or how money works, what are all the tools that are available for multiplying wealth. He has, exposure to all that, like most of us. Arjun, on the other hand, is a very aspiring and an ambitious learner in the field of finance. So these two boys, we actually went through the story. I don't know whether you guys had a chance to go through it. Quickly, you can go through it. But essentially, what you can summarize is Durai is a kind of a person who has fear of missing out. You only live once kind of a mentality. So, because he did not invest time in learning and experimenting and creating a flywheel for himself, he landed up designing what is called as a treadmill of life. So, financial treadmill is what he got into, which means to invest in assets that demand an EMI from him, So his times are now constrained. He cannot do what he wants because if he there is no opportunity for that. He has to follow a certain discipline continuously. Otherwise, he might fall out of the treadmill. That is Durai's life. Whereas Arjun, from the time he stepped out of college and joined the office, he landed up learning about various asset classes. In this particular case, Arjun had taken up stocks, futures, and options as trading to create cash flow. But otherwise, it could have been anything like commodity, oil, gold, or silver, or real estate, or invest in businesses directly, any of that sort. And how Arjun, uh, he he retires early because he has found a way to create a flywheel that will earn wealth for him. So that is one thing that we covered. Now we saw the various kinds of, this was our first session. What are all the various kinds of quadrants? This was authored by Robert Kiyosaki, the cash flow quadrants. Self-employed, employee, business, as well as investor. Every quadrant has its own mindset. So the question that we need to ask ourselves is which quadrant is likely to give us a flywheel and which quadrant is likely to give us a treadmill. There is nothing wrong in a treadmill as long as you enjoy being in a treadmill. You might go from one treadmill to another sophisticated treadmill, but at the end of the day, it can be a treadmill and that may be all right for you. But for some people, they may want to actually have a flywheel so that it gives them a sense of independence, sense of more disposable time and wealth. So again, there is no right or wrong answer. But the fact is, the employee class as well as the self-employed class will always have a treadmill to live with. Whereas a business owner and an investor will eventually land up in that of a flywheel. So, what is the mindset and why do we feel that way? How do they get to spend their time with? What is their opinion of risk? All those psychological aspects we covered in the earlier discussions. The various asset classes for capital gains, asset classes for cash flows, what are ETFs? We discussed that. And futures and options, we started touching upon, during which we started looking at what futures are. So, okay, so futures, each of us, we went through Opstra tool, and then we understood what is meant by going long in a Nifty future versus going short in a Nifty future. And this is how the payoff chart will look like. We also discussed the risks, the inherent risks in it. That is, after you have taken the position, if the Nifty were to pick up, then you would have invested only like 10% of the capital. And so the growth you will get, the growth in Nifty will really add up for you. And if it were happening the other way around, wherein the market turned bearish and the market were to fall, then you will also lose money. So is this a good cash flow asset? Uh, it is a cash flow asset provided it is also clubbed with other tools that are available in the market. Apart from futures, you have options. So the option will be another pairing tool that works well with futures. Options is not something that we have started discussing so far, but I would like to pause over here and then leave it to you for our discussions to let me know if just with futures you can create a cash flow asset. What exactly do you look for in an asset? Okay, let me give you some hints. Something is good only if you can control it. Okay, so with this, I think it's a good segue for us to understand once again what is the purpose of all our conversations. All our conversations are going to be revolving around creating and designing a flywheel for each and every individualistic need, basing on your aspiration, basing on your aptitude. For that, it requires a bit of learning from our end, uh, some trial and error, some experiments. The experiments not necessarily means that you need to actually enter the market or buy a piece of land or build a house and leave it for rent, nothing of this sort. With paper and pen itself, you can come up with some toy problems and try and see where your interests are. Then slowly put the skin in the game after you have learned and developed certain competencies. Okay. So if we don't do and create a flywheel for ourselves, chances are in life you will land up in a treadmill. That's all that we are saying. There is nothing holy about a flywheel, or there is nothing undermining about a treadmill. It is just we understand where we are going to land. And since we are starting life now, it will be a good opportunity for us to evaluate where we would like to be and how we would like our life to be few years from now or 10 or 15 years from now. Just have that thought in the back of your mind, and later on we will have some discussions. The next discussion is going to be more in terms of a, a small discussion on flywheel, little to get a sense of how we view flywheel, each and every one of us. And then in the context of futures, if futures by themselves are they a good tool for being a cash flow asset? That will be the discussion in the next session. Okay, take care, good luck, and if there's anything else, you can always message me offline.